How to paint an easy watercolor background. Now this video is all about how to paint a soft mottled background, something like that there, look, to give a kind of nice effect behind a main detailed subject. So that will help the subject kind of spring forward that little bit more, which it does, so really useful to know. Hi, my name is Paul Hopkinson. I'm an online art tutor for painting realistic wildlife, both plants and animals in watercolour. Oh, and don't forget to click on subscribe down below and also that bell icon, because when you press that, then YouTube will let you know when I put a brand new video on here. Right, the colours I'm going to be using for the background for the otter are going to be as follows. We'll try and keep it simple, so no more than 3 or 4 colours. You don't have to use the same colours, and if you haven't got that particular colour, use something similar to it. So for example, we've got burnt sienna, we've got permanent sap green, or sap green, whichever. Olin, or if you want to use lemon yellow, anything like that's fine. And we've also got burnt umber. Okay, so they're the 4 colours I'll be using for the back. There it goes. But I've been trying to get that to stay put all this time. So use these 4 colours for the background, or anything similar to this. Just keep it quite nice and soft and pastely, so not too dark, okay? Now when you're preparing your colours ready, as I say, get it ready before you even wet that background, okay? And always make more than you think you'll need. So you can see with these colours here, they're very watery. I don't want to run out of paint halfway through applying the background, because that's one of those situations where you start to panic a little bit, thinking it's starting to dry on me, and you've got to think about getting those colours made up again. These aren't too bad because they're just single colours, but when you're working on a mixture of different colours, so if you've got green in the burnt sienna and so on, then you've got to try and get that same tonal value back again. You've got to try and get that same shade. So because of that, just bear that in mind, make more than you think you'll need before you start even wetting that paper. Okay, alright, let's carry on then. Now when you do work on the background, always try it out first on some scrap watercolour paper. So I'm going to wet this area first of all using my size 5 brush. And the reason why I like to kind of test it out first of all is that when you're doing it this way around, at least that way you know you kind of roughly got the mixtures about right, hence making more than you think you'll need. Okay, so if you know if you've got the mixtures about right, then you know it should work quite well on the painting itself. And there has been times in the past where I've done a background, I've applied a background before I even start on the main painting, and it's not worked, you know. So always test it before you make a start. So I'm going to wet this paper thoroughly first, so it's nice and wet. And then I'm going to start adding a little bit of colour in. Now I always start off with the lightest colour first, dabbing it around, as you can see. I'm going to show you this in the video shortly anyway. Something like that. So this is our Orlin. Okay. And then we go for the burnt sienna, dabbing in places. And this way, if you do test it first of all, you can try the different strengths of colour out. So let's say, for example, I go for a stronger version of this burnt sienna. Look at that. Oh, that's rich. If it doesn't work, then you know to make it weaker when you do the main painting. So you can always smudge this in again, just give it a little tickle and smudge it back in, like so. Then we'll go for a little bit of sap green. Look at that. Wow, that's bright. Okay, so a little bit of sap green as it's kind of bursts across that paper. And that's very bright. And then back into the burnt umber. I'll say back, we haven't been in it yet, have we? No. So burnt umber, now that'll dullen that colour down, as you can see there. And that's not too bad. What you have to remember as well is that watercolour very often dries much lighter than it is on the paper. Okay, then you first put it on. And because you're putting the colour on the paper as well, which is already wet, the wet paper will allow it to kind of lighten as well as it dries. It will kind of soften those colours down. Okay, for the background we're going to use 2 different brushes, and this is going to be a standard little mop brush and an old size 18 Pro Art brush, which is very, very old. That's all I use it for, just putting background washes on, because it's so old you can't really do much else with it really. So, right, the masking fluid is nice and dry. I'll pop a card up in the right hand corner there for my videos on masking fluid. Make sure you get any splodges or splats anywhere else on the paper before you go in. Okay, so let's get the water on there first. So we're going to go for the clean water using the big mop brush, which is this one, or anything that you've got similar to that. So anything with a large brush, it doesn't have to be one of these, it can be whatever you've got. Okay, go to the top. And we need to kind of wet this background 2 or 3 times as we go along. So let's get a bit more on there. Soak it through. I've got my board on a slight angle today, which I do normally have it that way when I'm painting generally anyway, because it just kind of helps you, it saves kind of bending your back too much as well, which is pretty good. But also for a wash it can help create different effects where you can have the water or the colour running down the paper, not like a waterfall, but kind of gradually ease its way down as it goes along. If you don't want that to happen, then I'll suggest you do just prop up one end so it's more or less flat before you start putting the colour on the board. Okay, so that's about wet on there. We'll let that soak in just for a minute and we'll come back to that shortly. Okay, well that's soaked in a little bit. You can see like the way the paper's kind of undulating a little bit. But because I've already pre-stretched the paper, we know that once it dries, it'll dry nice and flat again. Alright, so that's what stretching is all about really. Right, so I'm going to go for the size 18 brush. And I'm going to go with a yellow first. So the Olin yellow, or if you've got lemon yellow, anything like that will be fine. But don't have it too intense, have it quite pale. So obviously a bit more water added, so it's a bit wishy-washy. Test out some test paper first, you know, the way I tend to show you on here. And just to make sure that it's not too bright. Okay, this is quite bright at the moment. But don't you worry. I'm going to make it a little bit duller as I go along by adding more colour to it. Okay. So again, up to the top of the paper. What you've got to remember when you're doing a background as well is that because I started there first, I have to make sure I keep going back there because it'll start to dry. And if that dries too quick, then therefore you end up with little blemishes or cauliflower marks here and there. Now I'm leaving little gaps in between this. Come back up to there, a little bit more yellow in there. Just so it's not all the same. I'm going to go into the sap green next, okay? I'm going to drop a little bit of that in, just pick up any blemishes that tend to happen occasionally. All happens with me as well. Okay, and all I'm doing is kind of scrubbing it in by using the side of the brush, skipping places here and there. Now if you're enjoying this video on how to paint an easy watercolour background, do me a favour and click on like, subscribe, share and also comment down below. I'd love to hear what you've got to say and your ideas on this. See, this will allow my channel to grow as well and help me teach even more people here on YouTube. Alright, so don't do everywhere. Just little sections here and there. Bear in mind we've got some more colour to go on there yet as well. And if we find it's too colourful, we can always take a little bit off if need be before it dries. Okay, so that'll probably do for the green, I think. Now for the burnt sienna. It's a bit warmer this, but again, don't use too much of it. Just little spots here and there. That's all you need. This will blend itself a little bit as well, you find. I'm just going to do a little bit higher up. I don't want to do too much higher up because it's mixing with the paint that's already on there as well. See, that's something else as well. Obviously, when you put this your wishy-washy colour on the wet paper dilutes it even more. So it's going to be even more, well, pale if you wish, when you finally get to the colour. Okay, and then we're going to go for the brown, which is a burnt umber. Just a few bits here and there. I'm going to keep this quite low now. Just a few. That's all I want to do. If it's too bright like that, just gently tease it away. Get anything that's popped onto the paper. And the same again. The answer as well is not to work the paper too much because you can obviously damage the surface of the paper. So don't overdo it. And once you think you've done, leave it to dry. Okay, and I think we're nearly there. I'll just ease that a little bit off there. Okay, and I think what we're going to do is, yeah, happy with that. Right, so that's the colour on the paper. So what we've got to do now, I'm just going to take off a little bit of this run area, just by using the corner of a tissue, bit of paper towel, kitchen towel in this case, and just to soak up some of them little bits that's kind of dribbled here and there. Right, the background is nice and dry, which is great, which means we can make a start on taking the masking fluid off. And when you remove the masking fluid, make sure that you remove it from the outside in, okay? So by using a very clean, dry finger, so very clean, dry finger, you roll the masking fluid in towards the otter in this case. And the reason why I do it that way around is because if the paper will tear, because sometimes it does happen, it does tear occasionally, just a little bit, it will tear in towards the subject side, in this case, as I say, the otter. So roll the masking fluid towards the otter, okay. Because if you did that way and then it tears the paper, it's going to pull a little bit of a line into the background, and you can't really repair that. So whereas if it happens within the otter itself or the bird, whatever you're painting, you can cover that up, right? Which is a handy thing about that. So you can see the way that just by using a cocktail stick in the first place, which is all I've done here, is kind of pick out these fine kind of fur details which overlaps the background. But it's a very easy watercolour effect, this background. So working with this wet in wet technique, you find that working with a watercolour background, you can do this just by using a little bit of masking fluid and taking your time. Right, now look in the description down below where you can sign up as a free member on my website, where you can get access to 2 real-time video tutorials, one on how to paint a robin in watercolour and also a bee eater. So pop along there, give it a go and let me know how we get on. Now let me know in the comments down below if you found this tutorial helpful, and also what kind of background you like to paint within your paintings, and also why that is. Now come and join me on my next video for speed painting on how to paint this otter in watercolour, and I'll go through that, and that also includes how to work on the wet in wet background. I'll see you there.